My parents sent me away after having my sister. They called me 12 years later to prove they're good parents after she failed. My parents gave up on me at 8 and sent me to live with my aunt. Before I turned 8, I knew they didn't like me. They basically had to deal with me. They had me in their early 20s, just starting their professions, and I watched them struggle to construct a life while raising me. Though I recently realized this, I think they resented me. I didn't understand why they hated me then. I spent my early years trying to please them, but nothing worked. My emotions were ignored. However, they behaved differently around friends and family. They couldn't let anyone know how horrible things were. They even convinced me to keep quiet out of fear of making them dislike me more. Years passed, and my mental and emotional health declined. I struggled in school and behaved out. I don't blame myself for my difficult childhood. My behavior would have changed if my parents had treated me better. They scolded, grounded, and punished me but failed. After my teachers complained about my behavior and grades, I misbehaved more to seek their attention. If being good fails, try being bad. This scheme failed. Mom got pregnant again around my 8th birthday. My parents were thrilled for the first time in years. I didn't understand the announcement at my birthday celebration. I learned weeks later. As my mom packed my luggage, my dad sat me down and told me I was going to live with my aunt. He said it was for my own good because I wasn't doing well there. Though young, I wasn't foolish. I knew they were dumping me. Replacement was coming with another baby. I had tantrums after being heartbroken. I wanted to stay with my family, friends, and parents even if they mistreated me. They didn't care about my tantrums. They sent me to my aunt's house out of state. I felt miserable on the trip and begged my parents to let me stay. I committed to improve my grades and behavior, but they were set. I hadn't considered that this might not be about my grades or behavior back then. Even if I was the best kid, they might have hated me. My parents helped me settle in at my aunt's house for a few days, but I was still angry. However, my aunt helped me adjust. She may be the kindest and most loving person ever. My aunt, my dad's older sister and the oldest of 4 siblings, raised me because she had never married or had children. Although her siblings worked elsewhere, she worked on the farm their parents left them. She knew I was upset about moving in, so she reassured me that everything would be great and that I would enjoy the place once I got to know it. Her remarks helped me greatly. After 2 days, my parents left and I broke down. My aunt was my only support. She constantly contacted my parents to talk to me to feel better, but they rarely responded. For 2 weeks I cried, and my aunt stayed with me. Eventually, I felt better. Living with her was so much better that I stopped missing my parents after a few months. I worked on the farm and went to school, and I was doing better. I had many friends, managed academics, and liked my teachers. My life improved once my parents sent me abroad. Even though we saw one other on vacations, I recognized I was better off without them. I was a troublesome youngster who needed a change of atmosphere, so my parents told my aunt I was moving in. After a few months, I told her my parents never wanted me, treated me horribly, and thanked her for taking me in. After that, my aunt treated my parents differently. She grew colder and distant. After that, we saw them at family parties and functions, but we haven't played much in 12 years. My happiness is greater without them, and they don't care. I have no relationship with my 12-year-old sister, which is probably best. Other family members say she's not growing up pleasant. She's one of the school's worst troublemakers at 12 and has a bad attitude. My parents have that issue, not me. My life is going fine. I'm in college to get a business degree so I can run the farm when my aunt retires. Since college is close, I can visit home every weekend, which is convenient. My parents called my aunt last weekend when I was at home because they couldn't reach me directly. First time in almost 12 years, we had a proper phone discussion. Their request was ludicrous, therefore it wasn't pleasant. I was curious when my aunt handed me the phone. After some little talk about my life, my parents said they were proud of my progress. They then said they wanted another go at parenthood. They asked me to stay in touch and move in after graduation. I was shocked since I couldn't fathom them requesting this. I questioned them why they suddenly wanted me back. Then they told me, my sister caused it. My sister is apparently even more of a difficult child than I was, which shames them. They wanted me to reconnect and show their friends and family they could raise wonderful kids. Reconnecting was about using me as proof that they were good parents, not about getting back together. I think people judge them. My sister is becoming a problem child like I was. They must demonstrate good parenting. It's absurd to want me back, yet they expected me to consider it. I told them on the phone that I wouldn't return and wouldn't assist them prove anything to their friends and family. I told them I was done with them, and they were too. I already described how poorly I did with my parents and how much better my life was after moving in with my aunt. I feel they were the problem, not troubled children. They didn't raise me, so saying they did would be a lie. My aunt handled the job well. I wouldn't let them acknowledge her efforts. Most of our relatives and acquaintances knew my aunt cared for me. Despite that, my parents planned to lie and say they had maintained in touch with me and visited often. I told them I wouldn't help spread this untruth, and they were alone. They threw a tantrum, saying they had supported me and my aunt for 12 years. Instead, they delivered a monthly check that hardly covers anything. My aunt always paid the rest herself, but she never complained. Now they were trying to appear supportive with their limited efforts. They told me my sister had failed, which was humiliating, so I had to help them because they were my parents. I lost it then. I told them they were not my parents and no longer my family. I told them to leave me and my aunt alone because she was my only family. Update 1. Hello, everybody. When I first posted 2 days ago, most of you agreed I'm NTA. I appreciate that since it helped me understand. The only reason I doubted myself was that my parents had tried everything to convince me that what I said was bad in the preceding week. They made it sound like I was intentionally harsh. Honestly, I didn't believe I said anything wrong. Not rude or impolite. After reading the comments, I knew they were trying to pressure me into agreeing to their requirements and returning home to show off their success. Despite blocking them, they keep contacting me from various accounts and phone numbers, which is bothersome. My aunt told me to disregard it. She stated there was no need to apologize if I was right. She also asked several family members why my parents were suddenly so eager to prove they were decent parents. That's when she learned what happened. I heard she smoked at my sister's 12th birthday party 2 weeks ago. When my parents tried to confiscate her cigarette, she threw a huge rage that caused my mom to cry. My mom's older sister, grandparents, and other relatives told her at the party that their 12-year-old daughter had a cigarette because of their parenting failure. They said my parents could have prevented this by being more proactive. My parents have spoiled my sister since childhood, I've learned. They never refused her, gave her a substantial allowance, and allowed her to do everything she wanted unsupervised. She knew she could get away with anything, so my 12-year-old sister ruled them. After the cigarette incident, many friends and family criticized them for raising her improperly. Due to their desire to prove themselves good parents, my parents want me back. To demonstrate their success, they want to display me as a prize. Their behavior is pitiful. Most importantly, they should realize this strategy won't work because everyone knows my aunt reared me. Even my aunt's contacts disapproved of my parents' decision to send me away when I wasn't doing well. When your kids are struggling, you should help them, not ignore them. They had often advised my parents to bring me back after my sister's birth so we could grow up together. My parents ignored it, stating I was better with my aunt and they knew best. I don't understand how or if my parents can think of others. They could easily write off my sister while trying to gain me back by labeling her a failure. Her 12-year-old age terrifies me. I think counseling would be enough to get her back on track. I don't think my parents should guide me. This is the child they sent me away for, saying they wanted to save time, money, and energy for her. However, they have raised and treated her this way. They say they sacrificed their oldest kid for her, but I don't think they care about us. I don't think my parents were meant to be parents. I could easily resent my sister because she got everything I never did from our parents: love, care, affection, money, and time. Personally, I feel awful for her. All of that isn't enough to raise a child properly. I'm more surprised that my parents failed both of their children. I hope they quit calling and messaging me since I don't want to talk to them after what my aunt and other family members taught me. Next time they guilt trip me, I'll tell them. Update 2: I've remained silent for a few days, but if my folks tried to guilt me again, I'd tell them. They did. They called me from a new number 2 hours ago. I was told to apologize and return home as soon as I picked up. I was feeling sick today and moody. That phone call made matters worse, and I snapped. I shouted at them, saying I wouldn't apologize since what I said was true. They were not my parents. They had done nothing to deserve that label. I'd call my aunt my family because she raised me. I informed them they hadn't seen me in 12 years. Before that, they ignored me. They should blame themselves if they can't accept my not seeing them as family. They should stop phoning me to make me feel awful about something I don't have to do. They interrupted me, saying that while my aunt reared me, they supported us and we shouldn't forget that. I said the money they sent barely met my expenses. My aunt paid for practically everything herself, so my parents' money was useless. If they had kept me, they wouldn't have had to pay child support. They should quit acting like providing money was a tremendous favor to my aunt. I informed them child support was the very least after sending their son to her. She kept this from the family out of love, even though she could have ruined their reputation. They should stop talking about their spending because money isn't everything. The incident at my sister's birthday celebration should have taught them that. They also threw money to their youngest daughter, who is now a spoiled brat. They called her a failure, but my parents failed. They failed us both. They reacted defensively when I said it. They said my sister was happy and I didn't understand. They said her birthday party incident was one time. But I know happy kids, especially 12-year-olds, don't smoke because they can. Telling them they were probably attempting to convince themselves didn't mean I believe they were trying to raise my sister. They did the same mistakes with hers with me, but in reverse. They neglected me but spoiled her with money and too much attention. They didn't govern her correctly during their time with her. I knew this even though I'd never met the youngster. They needed to contact me to prove they were decent parents, showing how little they cared about their kids. They wanted to look like good parents, not be good parents. Perhaps this was too much truth for them. They yelled at me, cussed me, and said I had no idea what I was talking about. Their defensiveness and ranting validated my accuracy. We argued for a few more minutes until they said they were glad they sent me away years ago. They said they were glad they selected their daughter since I wasn't good enough to be their son. They hung up, perhaps fearing their goodbyes would hurt me. I didn't care. I was glad I won the dispute because otherwise they wouldn't have resorted to such low blows. Now, I hope they think twice before fighting or calling me again. Only my inability to aid my sister bothers me. I feel bad because she might survive outside my parents' terrible atmosphere. But sometimes you win and lose. Third update. A week has passed since I spoke to my folks. That last phone call was the last time they disturbed me, which is better for them. From what I know, they've been telling the family that my sister's cigarette event was one time and won't happen again. But nobody is duped. She may have more going on, this may have been her first cigarette, but who knows what else she's done. My parents were the only ones responsible. It was evident that their lack of monitoring and discipline caused this. I don't usually condemn someone without knowing them, but my parents deserve it. What kind of folks abandon one child while pregnant with another? Who? My parents. I'm delighted my family is now seeing how broken they are and keeping their distance. After years of silence, my aunt has begun to reveal why they left me with her. They didn't want me around because they wanted to spend more time with their other child, not because I was a troublesome kid. My parents made me a problematic kid, not me. If I were to blame, I wouldn't have thrived after moving away. My aunt hid this for 12 years because she didn't want to destroy my parents' reputation, but now she thinks they deserve it. Due to their defensiveness, my parents are already feared. Denial regarding parenting failure is evident. Everyone now knows my parents are the culprits after hearing our story. They don't deserve my sister or myself. Some may believe we're overreacting and don't need to kick them while they're down, but this wouldn't have happened if they hadn't called me to help them pretend to be wonderful parents. They deserve it. Update 4 posting again after 2 weeks brings a huge update. My maternal grandparents are fighting for custody of my sister. My parents sent me to live with my aunt, but I've always maintained in touch with most of my family. I have a good relationship with my grandparents, so when they called a few days ago to ask about my parents, I told them. They were delighted. I finally told them about my parents' mistreatment. They believed my parents had a solid cause to send me away for years. Now they know no cause could justify putting your child away. They apologized for not discovering the truth sooner, and I said it was okay. Everyone struggles, and I didn't seem to be hurting. It would have been hard to know without being told. After the cigarette incident with my sister, my grandparents heard allegations about my treatment from other family members. My aunt finally told me how my parents abandoned me after leaving me off at her house. My grandparents decided to investigate after hearing this. They didn't want their younger granddaughter to experience what I did. After talking to me, they discovered my parents hadn't changed. They still cared more about appearing good parents than being there for their kids. That's when my grandparents fought for custody of my sister to raise her differently. I agree with the choice. My life improved after I left my parents, and I'm sure hers will too. They've been given temporary custody, but my sister doesn't care. Her indifference makes me think she'll get over it. My grandparents believe they will obtain complete custody shortly, but they will allow my parents visits. My sister has started trying to get to know me, which is the finest part. Several days ago, we spoke on the phone. She appears glad to talk to me, and I heard that our parents told her not to talk to me for years because I was a bad influence. I hope we can create a good friendship now that she's coming around. Hopeful for the future.